My dragon roommate accidentally revealed her tail during our first date. Heavy rain sheeted against the neon-lit window of the Golden Bowl, distorting the vibrant street lights of Ethelgard Prime into smudged watercolors of pink and electric blue. Inside the small ramen shop, steam rose from the open kitchen, carrying the savory scent of pork bone broth and garlic. Desmond sat at a corner table, his fingers nervously tracing the grain of the worn wood. He adjusted his glasses for the third time in a minute, checking the reflection in the window to ensure his collar was straight. He had ironed this button-down shirt twice, a departure from his usual university graphic tees. This night felt different because it had to be.
You can do this. It is just dinner. Just dinner with the person you have lived with for 6 months.
He took a slow breath, centering himself. The shop was quiet, a sanctuary from the bustling, wet streets outside. Ramona, the owner, was busy chopping scallions behind the counter, the rhythmic thud of her knife providing a steady beat to his racing heart. The bell above the door chimed, cutting through the ambient noise of the rain. Desmond looked up, and his breath hitched in his chest. Gwendolyn stood in the doorway, shaking water from a large, clear umbrella. She wore an oversized pastel hoodie that looked incredibly soft, the fabric draping over her tall frame in a way that seemed designed to conceal as much as it comforted. Below the hem of the hoodie, a pleated skirt swayed slightly as she moved. She looked scanning the room until her eyes locked onto his. A shy smile tugged at the corner of her lips.
Hey, I hope I didn't keep you waiting long. The Maglev line was backed up near the district border.
Not at all. I just got here myself.
That was a lie. He had been there for 20 minutes, terrified of being late. He stood up as she approached the booth, a gesture of old-fashioned manners that seemed to surprise her. She slid into the seat opposite him, pulling her hoodie tighter around her shoulders.
You look great, Gwen. Really?
Gwendolyn blushed, a deep crimson flush that started at her neck and rose to her cheeks. In the warm light of the shop, her silver hair seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence. She reached up, instinctively tugging the hood of her sweatshirt further forward, ensuring it covered the top of her head completely.
Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself, Des. I don't think I have ever seen you without a stain of thermal grease or coffee on your shirt.
Tonight is a special occasion. I figured I should try to match the elegance of my company.
She laughed, a melodic sound that seemed to vibrate in the air between them. It was a sound he had heard often from across the hallway of their shared apartment, usually when they were watching bad holofilms on the couch. But hearing it now, across a dinner table with the explicit context of a date, felt heavy with new meaning.
It is weird, right? We have eaten dinner together 100 times. Why does this feel so heavy?
Because usually we are arguing about whose turn it is to do the dishes or complaining about Professor Halloway's lectures. Tonight the stakes are different.
The stakes. You make it sound like a diplomatic summit.
In a way, maybe it is. Two independent powers negotiating a new treaty of alliance.
Gwendolyn smiled, but her eyes darted briefly to the side, scanning the few other patrons in the shop. She shifted in her seat, and Desmond noticed the way she sat slightly forward, keeping her back away from the wooden booth. It was a posture he had seen her adopt many times, always careful, always guarding the space behind her.
Relax, Gwen. It is just us. Ramona keeps this place quiet.
I know. I get nervous in public sometimes. You know that.
I know, and you are safe here.
He meant it. Over the last 6 months, Desmond had built a catalog of observations about his roommate. He knew she ran hot, often leaving the windows open even in the chill of the Ethelgardian winter. He knew she avoided silver cutlery, always opting for the wooden chopsticks or ceramic spoons. And he knew about the bumps beneath her hair that she so carefully hid. He had never pressed her on it, content to let her reveal herself in her own time. But tonight, watching the anxiety ripple through her posture, he felt a fierce protective instinct rise within him.
I am glad we are doing this. I was worried that if we tried to shift things, it might ruin the roommate dynamic. The apartment is the only place that feels like home.
It feels like home to me too, and I am not willing to risk that either. But I think this is worth the risk. Do you?
Gwendolyn looked down at her hands, her fingers interlocking on the table. Her nails were painted a dark blue, but he could see the slight sharpness to them, the way they were stronger and denser than average.
Yes, I think it is. You are the first person on this planet who hasn't looked at me like I am a puzzle to be solved or a threat to be managed. You just look at me like I am Gwendolyn.
That is because you are Gwendolyn. The rest is just details.
She looked up sharply, her eyes widening slightly. For a second, the vertical pupils of her eyes seemed to dilate, catching the neon light from the window, before returning to a rounder, more human shape. Desmond held her gaze, his expression open and steady. He wanted her to know that he saw her, really saw her, and that he wasn't running away.
You are a strange man, Desmond. Most people in your program are obsessed with categorizing everything. Xenobiology majors are usually the worst at just letting things be.
Maybe that is why I am at the top of the class. I know that life isn't about labels. It is about connection.
Ramona bustled over to the table then, wiping her hands on her apron. She was a stout woman with a no-nonsense attitude and a soft spot for the students who frequented her shop.
Well, look at you two. Finally stopped dancing around each other, did we? About time.
Good evening, Ramona. We will take the usual, please.
2 spicy miso ramens, extra chashu for the lady, and extra noodles for the string bean here. Got it. Anything to drink.
Iced green tea, please.
Same for me.
Ramona nodded and marched back to the kitchen. The interruption broke the heavy tension, replacing it with a lighter, more familiar atmosphere. Gwendolyn relaxed slightly, her shoulders dropping an inch.
She is terrifyingly observant.
She sees everything. It is part of the job.
Gwendolyn reached up to adjust her hood again, a nervous tick. A lock of silver hair slipped out, and for a fleeting second, the tip of a small, ivory-colored horn was visible against the dark fabric of her hood. She tucked it back quickly, glancing at Desmond to see if he had noticed. He kept his face neutral, offering her a warm smile instead of a question.
So tell me more about that archive project you mentioned this morning. You said you found something in the restricted section.
The change in subject worked instantly. Gwendolyn's eyes lit up, her anxiety replaced by intellectual passion.
Oh, it is fascinating, Des. There are records from the pre-unification era that completely contradict the official history of the sector. I found shipping manifests that suggest trade routes with the nebula existed centuries before first contact was officially made.
That would rewrite the entire economic history of the core systems.
Exactly, and it explains why certain artifacts keep showing up in the black markets here. They aren't smuggled in recently. They have been here for generations, hidden in plain sight.
As she spoke, her hands became more animated. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though her excitement was loud and clear. Desmond watched her, captivated not just by the information, but by the way she came alive when she spoke about history and secrets. It was ironic, he thought, that someone so obsessed with uncovering the past was working so hard to hide her own.
You have to be careful, Gwen. Digging into the sovereignty's old lies can be dangerous.
I know, but the truth is worth it. Besides, who is going to suspect a boring history student?
You are anything but boring.
She paused, the compliment catching her off guard. The rain outside intensified, drumming a heavy rhythm against the roof. But inside the booth, the world had shrunk to just the two of them. Desmond felt a surge of affection, so strong it almost frightened him. He reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers.
I mean it. You are brilliant and passionate and different in the best possible way.
Gwendolyn looked at his hand, then slowly, tentatively placed her own on top of it. Her skin was cool to the touch, smoother and firmer than he expected. He turned his hand over, interlacing his fingers with hers.
I have been hiding for a long time, Desmond, from a lot of things.
I know. You do not have to hide from me. Not ever.
She squeezed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. There was a moment of silence, heavy with unspoken truths. Desmond could see the conflict in her eyes, the war between the instinct to flee and the desperate desire to be known. He didn't push. He just held on, offering an anchor in the storm.
Maybe one day I can tell you everything.
Whenever you are ready. I am not going anywhere.
The smell of spices grew stronger as Ramona approached with a tray, the steam from the bowls signaling the next phase of the evening. Desmond withdrew his hand gently to make room for the food, but the connection remained, a silent thread tying them together across the table. He adjusted his glasses one last time, ready for whatever came next. He had a feeling that the secrets of the Great Drake Nebula were about to become a lot more personal. Ramona arrived at the table with 2 steaming ceramic bowls, the aroma of ginger and roasted garlic rising in thick clouds. She set them down with a practiced flick of her wrists, her eyes lingering on Gwendolyn with a look that was both maternal and knowing.
Eat up while it is hot. I added a few extra slices of pork for you, Gwendolyn. You look like you could use the energy tonight.
Thank you, Ramona. It smells absolutely wonderful.
Gwendolyn picked up her wooden chopsticks, her movements slightly stiff as she tried to maintain her composure. The steam from the ramen began to fog Desmond's glasses, but he didn't take them off. He watched her through the haze, nodding the way her silver hair shimmered under the warm yellow lights of the shop.
You mentioned those archives earlier. I have been thinking about what you said regarding the pre-unification trade routes. It makes so much sense why the Outer Rim colonies have such unique architectural styles if they were influenced by the nebula cultures so much earlier than the history books claim.
The mention of her research acted like a key turning in a lock. Gwendolyn's posture relaxed, and a genuine, bright smile broke across her face. She leaned forward, her eyes widening as she spoke, her earlier anxiety momentarily forgotten in the face of her intellectual passion.
It is even more complex than that, Desmond. I found a series of shipping manifests from an old freighter called the Starbound Wanderer. The logs show they were carrying crystalline structures that do not exist on any known planet within the sovereignty. These crystals were being moved in secret to the moon of Kalo for long, before the first official scouts arrived there.
That would mean there was a shadow government or a private corporation operating with advanced technology centuries ago.
Exactly, and the energy signatures recorded in those logs are unlike anything I have ever studied in the university labs. They are almost organic. It is as if the power source was alive.
As she spoke, Gwendolyn became more animated. Her hands moved through the air to emphasize her points, and her voice took on a melodic, rhythmic quality. She was so lost in the thrill of the discovery that her physical control began to slip. Behind her, beneath the hem of her pleated skirt, something moved with sudden, violent energy. A long, powerful tail, thick at the base and tapering to an elegant point, burst from its concealment. It was covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep indigo to a brilliant, metallic silver. The limb lashed out with a mind of its own, driven by the surge of adrenaline and joy she felt. The tip of the tail swiped across the table, narrowly missing the soy sauce bottle and sending a small dish of pickled ginger sliding toward the edge. Gwendolyn gasped, her eyes darting downward as she realized her glamour had failed. Her pupils narrowed into sharp, vertical slits, and the small horns atop her head pushed visibly against the fabric of her hood.
Oh no, I am so sorry. I didn't mean to.
Panic flooded her expression, and she started to pull back, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Desmond didn't flinch. He didn't look away in horror or shout for help. With a speed that surprised even himself, he reached out and grabbed a large cloth napkin from the dispenser. He lunged forward slightly, draping the heavy fabric over the iridescent limb before it could swing again. He used his other hand to steady the soy sauce bottle, his movements calm and deliberate. He leaned in close to her, his voice a low, soothing anchor amidst her rising fear.
It is all right, Gwen. Just stay with me. Nobody saw a thing. Just take a deep breath and look at me.
Gwendolyn froze, her chest heaving as she fought to regain control of her biology. She looked into Desmond's eyes, finding only warmth and a fierce, protective steadying force. Slowly, the frantic twitching of the tail subsided, and the scales stopped their rapid, shimmering vibrations.
I am a disaster. I shouldn't have come out tonight. I can't even keep myself together for a simple dinner.
You are not a disaster. You are just excited, and honestly, I find that incredibly charming. I told you before that you don't have to hide from me. I meant it then, and I mean it now.
He kept his hand resting on the napkin-covered tail, feeling the solid strength of the limb beneath the cloth. It felt warm, radiating a soft heat that seeped through the fabric. Gwendolyn swallowed hard, her pupils slowly widening back to their human-like circles, though the silver ring around her irises remained bright.
You aren't afraid of me. Most people would be running for the door right now.
I am a xenobiology student, Gwen. I spend my days looking at the wonders of the galaxy under a microscope. Seeing something this beautiful in person is the highlight of my year. Besides, you are still the girl who leaves half-finished tea mugs all over our kitchen. That is much more intimidating than a tail.
A small, watery laugh escaped her lips, and some of the tension drained from her face. She reached down and gently tucked the tail back beneath her skirt, her movements careful and deliberate this time. Desmond retracted his hand, giving her space but remaining close enough to offer support. While the two of them found their rhythm again, the atmosphere in the golden bowl shifted. At the far end of the narrow bar, a man sat alone. He wore a sharp, charcoal gray suit that looked entirely too expensive for a rainy night ramen shop. This was Quentin, and he was not interested in the food. Quentin held a small, sleek device in the palm of his hand. It looked like a standard comms unit, but the display was filled with scrolling lines of amber code and a pulsing blue dot that centered directly on their booth. He adjusted a pair of thin, wire-frame earpieces, his expression cold and professional.
I have a positive match on the biological signature. The fluctuations were brief but significant. The asset is showing high levels of emotional volatility.
He spoke into a microscopic microphone hidden in his collar, his voice barely a whisper that was lost in the sound of the rain hitting the windows. He watched Desmond and Gwendolyn with the detached focus of a predator.
There is a local male with her. He appears to be a civilian, likely a university student. He is currently acting as a stabilizer for the subject. Should I move in and secure the scion now?
There was a pause as he listened to a response from his superiors. A slow, thin smile touched his lips, though it held no warmth. He tapped the device, and the blue light intensified, casting a ghostly glow over his sharp features.
Understood. I will wait for the perimeter team to get into position. We cannot afford a scene in this sector. The sovereignty wants her returned quietly. If the boy interferes, he is to be treated as an enemy combatant.
Quentin closed his hand over the device, pocketing it with a fluid motion. He stood up, leaving a stack of credits on the bar that far exceeded the cost of a meal he hadn't touched. He walked toward the door, his footsteps silent against the floor. Inside the booth, Desmond felt a sudden chill, a primal instinct whispering that they were being watched. He glanced toward the bar, but the man in the gray suit was already gone, leaving only the swinging bell above the door to signal his departure.
Is everything okay, Gwen? You look like you just saw a ghost.
I just had a weird feeling, like the air suddenly got very heavy. It is probably just the adrenaline wearing off.
She reached across the table, her fingers brushing against his. The warmth of her touch was a stark contrast to the cold dread that had momentarily brushed against Desmond's spine. He squeezed her hand, offering a reassuring smile even as he mentally noted the exits of the shop.
We should finish our dinner. Then maybe we can head back to the apartment and you can show me those logs from the Starbound Wanderer. I want to see exactly what you found.
I would like that. I would like that a lot.
They returned to their meal, the shared secret between them creating a new, deeper layer of intimacy. The rain continued to lash against the glass, a chaotic world swirling outside their small sanctuary, unaware that the quiet life they had built together was about to be challenged by the weight of a galaxy. The bell above the door chimed as it swung shut, but the man in the gray suit did not disappear into the rainy night. Instead, he turned back toward the booth where Desmond and Gwendolyn sat, his footsteps clicking with a rhythmic, predatory precision against the tiled floor. He stopped at the edge of their table, his presence casting a long shadow that seemed to swallow the warmth of the overhead lamps.
I apologize for the interruption of your evening, but some matters simply cannot wait for the convenience of a dessert course.
He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver disc, placing it on the wooden table between the bowls of half-eaten ramen. A holographic projection flickered into existence, displaying a complex crest featuring a coiled dragon and a crown of stars. The symbols pulsed with a deep, authoritative violet light that made the air feel heavy with artificial gravity.
My name is Quentin, and I am a primary recovery agent for the Galactic Sovereignty. I am here to execute a high-priority extraction warrant for the individual currently known as Gwendolyn.
I told you I would not go back to the nebula. I have nothing left to say to the High Council or the marriage brokers.
Your personal desires are irrelevant to the stability of the Great Drake Nebula, Princess Gwendolyn. You are the last scion of the solar flare lineage, and your flight to a backwater world like Ethelgard Prime has caused significant political instability. The state marriage must proceed to ensure the alliance with the Orion hegemony remains intact.
Gwendolyn shrank back into the corner of the booth, her silver hair shimmering as she lowered her head. Desmond felt her hand tremble beneath his own, and the sight of her fear ignited a cold, sharp clarity in his mind. He did not pull his hand away. Instead, he gripped her fingers tighter and looked Quentin directly in the eye.
You are a long way from home, Quentin, and you are currently standing on a sovereign university world that operates under independent planetary law. You have no jurisdiction here without a local magistrate's signature, which I know for a fact you do not have.
You are remarkably well informed for a simple student of literature, or whatever it is you pretend to study. However, the sovereignty does not recognize the petty local ordinances of a research colony when a royal asset is involved. Stand aside, boy, and perhaps I will forget that you were harboring a fugitive.
I am not just a student, and I certainly was not pretending when I moved in with her. I am a senior candidate in the Xenobiology and Interstellar Law program at the University of Ethelgard. I have known exactly what Gwendolyn is since the second week we lived together as roommates.
Desmond reached up and adjusted his glasses, tapping a small, nearly invisible sensor on the side of the frame. The lenses shimmered with a faint blue light as they recalibrated. He had spent months building these spectacles in the university labs, refining the LiDAR-enhanced ocular processors to detect high-frequency energy signatures.
My glasses are not for my vision, Quentin. They are custom-built sensors designed to monitor biological energy fluctuations. I noticed the heat signature of Gwendolyn's internal core the first time she made tea in our kitchen. I also noticed the way your comms unit was scanning the room when you were sitting at the bar.
You are more observant than you look, but knowledge is not a shield. I have a team outside, and they are not interested in university lectures.
A heavy thud echoed through the shop as Ramona, the owner, slammed a massive cast-iron pot onto the counter. She leaned over the steam-filled space. Her eyes narrowed and her arms crossed over her chest. The kitchen knife she had been using was now tucked into a leather sheath at her hip, and her demeanor had shifted from a friendly cook to something far more formidable.
This shop is a designated neutral zone under the Merchant Guild Protection Act. If you want to play at being a bounty hunter, you can do it out in the rain. While you are under my roof, you will treat my customers with respect, or I will show you why they call this the Golden Bowl.
You are overstepping, shopkeeper. This is a matter of state.
Actually, it is a matter of civil law now. While you were busy making your grand entrance, I used my university credentials to access the Ethelgard Prime Central Registry. I have already filed the preliminary paperwork to grant Gwendolyn formal political asylum under the Forgotten Charter of 2482.
Desmond pulled a handheld datapad from his bag and slid it across the table. The screen displayed a confirmed filing status from the planetary government, complete with a timestamp that preceded Quentin's arrival at their table.
Section 9 of that charter states that any non-human entity residing on a university world who is contributing to the advancement of local research is entitled to immediate sanctuary if their personal safety is threatened by an external political power. Gwendolyn has been helping me with my thesis on draconic physiology for months. She is officially a research associate, which makes her a protected resident of this planet.
You think a piece of digital paper will stop the sovereignty? We have fleets that can blockade this entire system before your university can even hold a faculty meeting.
Maybe, but you are a recovery agent, not an admiral. If you take her by force now, you are committing an act of kidnapping against a registered resident of a neutral world. That is an intergalactic incident that your superiors will not appreciate. You were sent here to bring her back quietly, and I just made this very, very loud.
Gwendolyn looked at Desmond with a mixture of shock and profound relief. She had spent months hiding her tail and tucking her horns under hats, living in constant fear that her secret would be her undoing. She had never imagined that the quiet, lanky boy who always forgot to do the dishes was secretly building a legal and technological fortress around her.
You did all of this for me. You knew who I was the whole time, and you never said a word.
I wanted you to tell me when you were ready. I didn't care about the crown or the nebula. I cared about the girl who gets excited about old archives and makes the best spicy miso I have ever tasted. I chose to stay because you are the most real thing I have found in this galaxy.
I chose to be your roommate because I felt safe with you. I thought it was just because you were kind, but I see now that you were also the smartest person in the room. You saw the monster, and you decided to become her lawyer instead.
You are not a monster, Gwendolyn. You are a person who deserves to choose her own life. And as long as I am standing here, you are going to have that choice.
Quentin looked from the datapad to the determined young man sitting across from the Dragon Princess. He saw the way Desmond's hand never wavered, and the way Ramona was already reaching for a hidden alarm button under the counter. The agent realized that his simple retrieval mission had just evolved into a diplomatic nightmare.
This is far from over, Desmond. You have successfully delayed the inevitable, but the sovereignty does not lose its assets so easily. My team is staying in this sector, and we will be watching for the slightest breach of your precious charter.
Then you should get comfortable, because I am very good at following the rules when they are on my side.
Quentin snatched his silver disc from the table, the holographic crest vanishing instantly. He gave a stiff, formal bow to Gwendolyn that felt more like a threat than a gesture of respect, then turned and walked out of the shop. The bell chimed one last time as he disappeared into the dark, rainy street. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the sound of the rain and the bubbling of the ramen pots. Gwendolyn let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for centuries, her shoulders finally dropping from their defensive posture. She turned to Desmond, her iridescent eyes shimmering with a warmth that had nothing to do with her internal dragon fire.
We are in a lot of trouble, aren't we?
Probably, but at least we are in it together. And I think we should probably order another round of gyoza while we figure out our next move.
Ramona laughed from behind the counter, the tension finally breaking as she reached for a fresh plate. Outside, the neon lights of Ethelgard Prime continued to flicker, but inside the golden bowl, the two of them were no longer just roommates or a boy and a girl on a date. They were an alliance, and for the first time in her long life, Gwendolyn felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. The warm atmosphere of the golden bowl shattered the moment. The front window vibrated with a low, subaudible thrum. Ramona stopped laughing mid-breath. Her eyes darted to a small monitor tucked behind the cash register, displaying a grainy feed of the alleyway outside. The image flickered, and then froze on a loop of empty rain-slicked pavement.
They cut the external feeds. He did not leave to retreat. He left to position his team.
Of course he did. Diplomatic immunity only works if there are witnesses to enforce it.
Desmond grabbed his bag, his movements sharp and calculated. He shoved the remaining gyoza into a takeout box with surprising efficiency, handing it to Gwendolyn even as he pulled her toward the kitchen. The romantic haze of the evening evaporated, replaced by the cold clarity of survival.
Desmond, wait. If we run, we look guilty. The sovereignty will use that to bypass the asylum claim.
They are already bypassing it. Look at the door.
Through the frosted glass of the front entrance, 3 distinct shadows loomed. They were too large to be ordinary pedestrians, and too still to be customers seeking shelter from the downpour. The faint blue glow of charged energy batons reflected off the wet glass.
Out the back. Now, take the service tunnels toward the old shipyard. The heavy metal interference there will scramble their trackers.
Ramona slammed her hand against a red panel on the wall. Heavy security shutters crashed down over the front windows and door, sealing the shop like a fortress. The sudden darkness was pierced only by the emergency lights, bathing the kitchen in stark crimson.
Thank you, Ramona. I will wire the damages to your offshore account.
Just keep her safe, kid. Go.
Desmond kicked the rear door open and pulled Gwendolyn out into the deluge. The rain on Ethelgard Prime fell in sheets of relentless gray, instantly soaking through their clothes. The alley was a narrow throat of brick and conduit, smelling of wet rust and ancient frying oil.
They are going to catch us, Desmond. My biosignature is like a flare in the dark to their scanners.
Not if we keep moving. I adjusted the frequency of your personal shield earlier. It should scatter the signal enough to make you look like background radiation.
They sprinted down the alley, their footsteps splashing loudly in the deepening puddles. Overhead, the whine of a low-altitude transport engine cut through the sound of the rain. A spotlight swept across the rooftops, hunting for movement. Desmond yanked Gwendolyn behind a stack of discarded shipping pallets, just as the beam swung past their position.
This is insane. I am a princess of the Great Drake Nebula. I should be fighting them, not hiding behind garbage.
You are a research associate with a pending legal case. If you fight, you are a combatant. If you run, you are a frightened civilian. We need you to be the victim here.
He adjusted his glasses, tapping the frame to cycle through vision modes. The lenses overlaid a wireframe map of the district onto his view of the dark alley. Red dots pulsed 2 streets over, closing in fast.
They are flanking us. We need to cross the main avenue to get to the shipyard.
They broke cover and ran. Gwendolyn struggled with her long skirt, the wet fabric clinging to her legs. In a fluid motion, she ripped the hem up to her knees, freeing her stride. Her tail, no longer able to be fully hidden in the sprint, lashed out behind her for balance, the silver scales gleaming in the neon light of the street signs. They burst out of the alley onto the wide, empty expanse of the industrial avenue. The shipyard loomed ahead, a skeletal landscape of cranes and rusted containers rising against the stormy sky.
Almost there, just past the gate.
A bolt of blue energy sizzled through the air, striking the pavement inches from Desmond's left foot. Steam hissed from the impact crater.
Desmond.
3 armored figures dropped from the overhead maglev tracks, landing in a triangle formation between the couple and the shipyard gate. Their armor was matte black, faceless and terrifying. They raised their batons, the tips crackling with suppression charges.
Change of plans.
He skidded to a halt, grabbing Gwendolyn's wrist and swinging her toward a narrow gap in the fence of a decommissioning yard. They scrambled through the opening, tearing their clothes on the rusted wire. The yard was a maze of stacked shipping containers, towering 3 stories high. They wove through the metal canyons, the sound of heavy boots pursuing them echoing off the steel walls. Every turn looked the same. The rain blinded them, turning the world into a blur of gray and black. Desmond spotted a ladder leading to the top of a container stack and shoved Gwendolyn toward it.
Up. We need the high ground.
They scrambled up the wet rungs, slipping twice before hauling themselves onto the corrugated roof of the container. But as they stood up, a harsh floodlight blinded them from above. The hovering transport had found them. The wind whipped Gwendolyn's hood back, revealing her horns and silver hair to the night. She stood frozen, chest heaving, staring up at the belly of the ship that represented everything she had run from.
Over loudspeaker, there is nowhere left to run, Your Highness. Surrender now, and the boy will be allowed to live. Resist, and we will mourn him together.
Gwendolyn looked at Desmond. He was drenched, shivering and clutching his bag like a lifeline. He looked terrifyingly fragile against the might of the sovereignty. A sob caught in her throat, hot and sharp.
He is right. I cannot let you die for a charter loophole.
She stepped forward, raising her hand slowly. Her tail drooped, the tip dragging on the wet metal.
I surrender. Just let him go.
Desmond grabbed her arm, his grip surprisingly strong. He pulled her back, stepping between her and the blinding light of the ship.
No deal.
Desmond, stop. Look at them. You have done enough. You proved you are brave. Do not prove you are stupid.
I am not trying to be brave, Gwen. I am trying to be accurate. And my calculations say we still have 1 card left to play.
He reached into his bag and pulled out a device that looked like a tangled mess of copper wire, glass tubes, and a heavily modified portable gaming console. It hummed with a chaotic, unstable energy.
Over loudspeaker, that is a Class 4 disruption device. You will kill us all, boy.
Actually, it is a localized harmonic dampener. I built it to keep the neighbor's bass from shaking our walls, but I cranked the output up by about 3,000%.
The enforcers on the ground were climbing the ladder. The ship hovered lower, weapons locking on. Gwendolyn looked at the frantic determination in Desmond's eyes and felt a surge of something hotter than dragon fire. It was hope.
What do I do?
Cover your ears and hold on to me. Tight.
Gwendolyn wrapped her arms around his waist, burying her face in his chest. Her tail instinctively coiled around his leg, anchoring them together. Desmond leveled the device at the hovering ship and jammed his thumb down on the trigger. The air did not explode. Instead, it screamed. A piercing, high-frequency shriek erupted from the device, shattering the rhythm of the rain and causing the floodlights to burst in a shower of sparks. The hovership lurched violently to the left as its stabilizers failed. Below them, the armored enforcers clutched their helmets, their suit systems crashing under the sonic assault. The darkness returned, absolute and heavy, as the power grid in the immediate block shorted out.
Run, now.
They leaped from the container roof to the next stack, moving blindly through the chaos. The transport spun out of control, crashing into a pile of scrap metal with a deafening screech of tearing steel. Desmond led her down a maintenance ramp on the far side of the yard. His device was smoking. The plastic casing melted from the discharge. He tossed it into a puddle as they hit the ground running again.
You took down a Corvette with a modified game console.
I told you, I am very good at physics.
They did not stop until they reached the edge of the shipyard, where the industrial waste met the dark waters of the canal. An old, automated barge was chugging slowly upstream, carrying waste to the recycling center.
We have to jump.
Onto the garbage barge. That is disgusting.
It is the only thing moving that does not have a pilot to report us.
Without waiting for an argument, Desmond took a running leap. He landed hard on a pile of compressed metal cubes, groaning as the impact shook his bones. He turned and held out his arms.
Jump, Gwen. I will catch you.
Gwendolyn looked back at the smoke rising from the shipyard. She looked at the boy with the crooked glasses and the ruined shirt standing knee-deep in trash, reaching out for her. She did not hesitate. She launched herself across the gap, her tail acting as a rudder in the air, and crashed into him. They tumbled together onto the metal, sliding down into the shadows of the barge. The rain continued to fall, washing the soot from their faces, but the sounds of pursuit were fading into the distance.
Are you okay?
I smell like wet rust and sulfur.
That is just the barge. Or maybe it is me.
Gwendolyn laughed, a ragged, hysterical sound that quickly turned into a sob. She buried her face in his neck, her body shaking. Desmond held her, stroking her wet hair, his hand brushing against the hard ridge of a horn. He did not pull away.
We are safe for now. The barge will take us to the lower district. I know a place there, an old server farm. We can hide.
Why are you doing this, Desmond? Really? You could have walked away 10 times tonight.
I told you at dinner, you are the most real thing I have found, and I am not letting them turn you back into a political abstract.
The barge drifted silently under a bridge, the shadows swallowing them whole. Gwendolyn lifted her head, her iridescent eyes glowing softly in the dark. She looked at him not as a roommate or a savior, but as something she had never had a name for until this moment.
You are insane, Desmond of Ethelgard.
Maybe, but I am also your lawyer, and I advise you to get some rest. We have a long night ahead of us.
The barge groaned against the rusted pier of the lower district, its engine sputtering a final cloud of steam into the cold air. Desmond jumped first, his boots splashing into a shallow puddle of oily water that reflected the flickering neon signs of the slums. He reached back for Gwendolyn, his hands steady despite the tremors of exhaustion. They moved quickly through the maze of derelict cooling towers toward a structure that resembled a jagged tooth of glass and steel rising from the concrete.
This is it. The old Ethelgard University data repository. It is technically off-limits, but my credentials still work for the secondary maintenance hatch.
It looks like a graveyard for dead ideas.
It is a sanctuary. The sovereignty cannot track us inside because the shielding is 3 meters thick. Plus, I have a few surprises waiting in the local network.
They slipped inside the server farm, the air smelling of cold copper and dry air. Rows of processing units stood like silent sentinels in the dim light, their cooling fans creating a low drone that filled the cavernous space. Desmond led her to a central console, his fingers flying across a holographic keyboard. Suddenly, a beam of blue light cut through the dark, pinning them against a rack of blinking servers. Quentin stepped out from behind a terminal, his gray suit perfectly dry despite the torrential storm outside. 4 enforcers followed him, their energy batons crackling with a threatening blue discharge.
You are predictable, Desmond. An academic always runs to the library when he is scared.
I am not scared, Quentin. I am prepared. You are standing in a high-security zone with no legal jurisdiction.
Leave him out of this. If you want me to go back to the Great Drake Nebula, I will go. Just let him walk away and forget he was ever part of this.
I am not going anywhere, and neither are you.
Desmond pulled the modified game console from his jacket, his thumb hovering over a red toggle he had soldered onto the casing. He slammed the command into the interface. A high-frequency pulse rippled through the room, causing the enforcers to stumble as their cloaking devices and weapon sights shattered into static. The blue light from the trackers died instantly, leaving the room in a heavy, natural darkness lit only by the faint green status lights of the servers.
Now, Gwendolyn, Show them why they should have left us at the Golden Bowl.
Are you sure? You know what happens when I let go.
I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I want to see you, all of you.
Gwendolyn let out a breath she had been holding for years. The oversized pastel hoodie tore at the seams as her silver scales expanded, catching the faint light from the server LEDs like 1,000 tiny mirrors. Her iridescent tail grew longer, thick with muscle, and tipped with razor-sharp plates that scraped against the metal floor. Two majestic horns curved back from her forehead, glowing with a faint, internal heat that shimmered in the cool air. She did not look like a monster. She looked like a goddess of ancient fire and steel, a creature of myth standing in a world of machines. She moved with a grace that defied physics. With a single sweep of her tail, she knocked the energy batons from the hands of the leading enforcers. She did not bite or claw, but instead occupied the space with an overwhelming presence that made the guards freeze in terror. Quentin backed away, his face turning a sickly shade of pale as he looked up at the silver-scaled being towering over him.
Check the local network, Quentin. I just uploaded the last 2 hours of footage to every major news outlet on Ethelgard Prime and the university dean.
You would start a massive diplomatic incident for a simple roommate.
I would start a galactic war for her, but luckily I do not have to. If you take her now, the whole galaxy sees the sovereignty violating neutral university soil and attacking a civilian student. Your career ends tonight unless we change the narrative.
Quentin looked at the glowing princess, and then at the boy with the crooked glasses, who was currently holding the sovereignty's reputation hostage. He knew he had been beaten by a combination of dragon fire and human stubbornness. He slowly lowered his scanner and signaled his men to stand down.
What are you proposing, Desmond? I cannot simply return empty-handed.
You report that the target was lost in the shipyard explosion. You say she is deceased. In exchange, I delete the footage and keep your illegal incursions off the permanent record.
And you leave us alone forever. If I ever see a sovereignty ship in this sector again, I will not be so gentle with the next retrieval team.
The sovereignty does not like losing valuable assets.
Then tell them she is not an asset anymore. She is a person, and she has a very good lawyer.
Quentin lingered for a moment, his eyes lingering on the raw power Gwendolyn displayed. He nodded once, a sharp and professional gesture, before turning to lead his team back into the shadows of the maintenance tunnels. The server farm grew quiet again, the only sound being the soft crackle of Gwendolyn's scales as they slowly receded back into her human form. She stood in the ruins of her hoodie, her silver hair falling over her shoulders. Hours later, they sat on the edge of the roof above their apartment building. The storm had passed, leaving the sky over Ethelgard Prime a deep, velvet purple. The neon lights of the city twinkled below like fallen stars, reflected in the puddles on the roof. Gwendolyn leaned against Desmond, her tail wrapping around his waist with a gentle, rhythmic squeeze of pure affection.
You really would have started a war for me.
I preferred the paperwork option, but yes, I would have.
I think I like being a person more than being a princess. It is much quieter.
You are both to me, but mostly you are just Gwendolyn, my roommate who owes me a new game console.
She laughed, a warm and genuine sound that echoed into the night. She rested her head on his shoulder, her horns catching the light of the rising moon. For the first time since she had arrived on this planet, she did not feel like she was hiding a dark secret. She felt like she was finally home. Desmond put his arm around her, feeling the warmth of her skin and the steady beat of her heart against his side. They were safe, they were together, and the future was finally theirs to write.
So what do we do tomorrow?
I was thinking we could go back to the Golden Bowl. I think we still have a credit for those drinks we never finished.
I would like that very much. Just no more agents, please.
I promise. Just you, me, and some very spicy ramen.
The city continued to pulse with life below them, a vibrant world of metal and light. But high above the streets, in the quiet space between the stars and the neon, two souls found the one thing the sovereignty could never take away. They found each other. The neon sign of the Golden Bowl flickered with a comforting, rhythmic buzz, casting intermittent splashes of pink light onto the wet pavement of the alley. Ethelgard Prime was busy tonight, the air thick with the smell of exhaust and frying oil, but the chaos felt different now. It was no longer a cage. It was a backdrop. Desmond held the door open, the bell chiming a familiar welcome that seemed louder than it had the night before.
I still feel like everyone is staring.
They are staring because you are 6 feet tall and wearing a hoodie that says Orbital Mechanics in glitter print. Not because they know you are a dragon princess declared legally deceased as of this morning.
Gwendolyn chuckled, a sound that rumbled slightly in her chest, and stepped into the warmth of the shop. The humidity of the rain vanished, replaced by the savory, grounding scent of pork broth and ginger. The shop was empty save for Ramona, who was scrubbing the counter with a vigor that suggested she was trying to erase the memory of the previous night's standoff. She stopped mid-wipe as they entered, her eyes narrowing as she scanned them from head to toe.
I was wondering if you two would have the nerve to show your faces in here again, or if I was going to have to explain to the health inspector why there are scorch marks on my back wall.
We can pay for the wall. I think the sovereignty left a budget for collateral damage in their haste to leave the sector.
Keep your credits. I fixed it with some sealant and a poster of the old star charts. Sit down. You look terrible.
They slid into their usual booth, the worn red vinyl creaking under their weight. It was the same table where everything had gone wrong, yet reclaiming it felt like a victory. Gwendolyn pulled her hood down, letting her silver hair cascade over her shoulders. She did not check the windows. She did not scan for exits. She simply picked up a menu, though she already knew it by heart.
Do you think he is really gone? Quentin.
I checked the Port Authority logs before we left the apartment. A diplomatic cruiser departed for the Great Drake Nebula 3 hours ago. Cargo manifest listed sensitive biological assets null retrieval. He went home empty-handed, but his record is clean. That is all men like him care about.
Men like him care about order. You disrupted his order. Humans are strange that way. You value chaos if it means protecting something you care about.
It is not chaos. It is aggressive improvisation.
Ramona appeared at the table, slamming down 2 large bowls of ramen. The broth was a deep, fiery red, topped with double portions of chashu pork and a perfectly soft-boiled egg. Steam curled into the air, obscuring Desmond's glasses for a moment. He took them off to wipe them, feeling the heat of the soup warming his face.
On the house, consider it a thank you for not letting the secret police drag a student out of my shop. Bad for business.
Thank you, Ramona, for everything. You could have turned us in.
I have run this shop for 30 years, girl. You think you are the first person running from something to eat my noodles. Ethelgard Prime is a planet of strays. You fit right in. Just try not to knock over the soy sauce with that tail of yours today.
Gwendolyn froze, her spoon halfway to her mouth. She looked at Ramona, then at Desmond, her vertical pupils widening. Ramona winked, a dry, unimpressed gesture, and turned back to the kitchen to chop scallions.
I told you. She notices everything.
I suppose I need to work on my spatial awareness.
Under the table, out of sight from the street but clear to Desmond, the iridescent shimmer of her tail uncoiled from around her waist. It stretched out, relaxing for the first time in 24 hours, and draped heavily across Desmond's feet. The weight of it was grounding. It was a physical reminder of the trust she had placed in him, a creature of myth and starlight resting her defenses on his Converse sneakers.
So now that you are officially a ghost in the system, what is the plan? You cannot exactly go back to your old thesis topic. The sovereignty might flag the research.
I was thinking of changing majors. History is fascinating, but I find myself suddenly very interested in Terran engineering, specifically sonic disruption technology.
You want to learn how to build the device. I used to scramble their sensors.
I want to know how a human with a soldering iron and a bag of spare parts outsmarted a level 5 suppression team. It was impressive.
It was terrifying. My hands are still shaking.
Your hands were steady when it mattered. That is the other thing about humans. You are fragile. You break easily. You have no scales, no fire, no natural weapons. Yet you stand in front of things that could crush you without hesitating. Why?
Desmond looked down at his bowl, stirring the noodles with his chopsticks. He thought about the moment in the shipyard, the rain slicking his hair, the gunship bearing down on them. He hadn't thought about politics or asylum laws in that second. He had only thought about the way Gwendolyn hummed when she made coffee in the morning, and how the apartment felt empty when she was gone.
Because we don't like being told what to do. And because we pack bond with anything, even terrifying dragon princesses who steal our hoodies.
I did not steal it. I commandeered it for tactical camouflage.
It is pastel pink. It is the opposite of camouflage.
Gwendolyn laughed, and this time she didn't cover her mouth. A small puff of smoke escaped her lips, smelling faintly of wood smoke and cinnamon. She caught it quickly, waving it away with her hand, but her eyes were dancing with amusement. The fear that had defined her existence on this planet was evaporating, replaced by the mundane, beautiful reality of a dinner date.
Careful, no fire in the ramen shop. Ramona will actually kill us this time.
I am in control. Mostly.
A small drone buzzed into the shop, hovering near the entrance. It was a standard courier bot, carrying a small, flat package. It scanned the room, locked onto Desmond's biosignature, and drifted over to the table. It dropped the package onto the wood with a clatter, and immediately zipped back out into the rain.
That is ominous.
Open it.
Desmond peeled back the seal. Inside was a single data chip and a handwritten note on actual paper, a rarity in the digital age. The handwriting was sharp, angular, and precise. Desmond read it aloud, his voice dropping to a murmur.
To Mr. Desmond, the enclosed chip contains a clean identity profile for one Gwendolyn Smith, transfer student from the Outer Rim. The backstory is watertight. Do not make me regret my discretion. If I see either of you again, I will not be polite. Q.
Smith. That is the most generic human name possible.
It is perfect. It means you are nobody. And if you are nobody, you can be anyone.
Gwendolyn took the chip, turning it over in her long fingers. The silver scales on her knuckles caught the neon light, shimmering in a spectrum of blues and violets. She closed her hand around it, not as a royal claiming a title, but as a woman claiming her life.
Gwendolyn Smith. It lacks a certain grandeur.
I like it. It sounds like someone who owes me a rematch in Super Mecha Fighter.
You are on, but I am not holding back this time. No more hiding my reflexes.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
They ate in comfortable silence, the sounds of the city fading into a distant hum. The rain began to let up outside, leaving the streets slick and reflecting the kaleidoscope of the city lights. Under the table, Gwendolyn's tail gave Desmond's ankle a gentle, reassuring squeeze. He looked up at her, catching the reflection of the golden bowl's lights in her alien, beautiful eyes. There were a million stars in the galaxy, wars being fought, empires rising and falling. But right here, in a booth with peeling vinyl and spicy broth, Desmond knew he had won the only victory that mattered.
You know, we never actually finished the date part of the date.
I believe we skipped straight to the life-threatening adventure portion of the relationship.
We can go back to step 1. Hi, I'm Desmond. I'm a xenobiology student with a very chaotic roommate.
Gwendolyn smiled, and for the first time her horns were visible as she leaned forward, no longer caring who saw. She was done hiding. She was home.
Hello, Desmond. I am Gwendolyn. I am a refugee from a nebula far away, and I think I am exactly where I am supposed to be.
Desmond reached across the table, taking her hand. Her skin was warm, stronger than steel, and softer than anything he had ever known.
Nice to meet you, Gwendolyn.
Outside, the clouds parted, revealing the vast, endless starfield above Ethelgard Prime. It was a big, dangerous galaxy, full of agents and empires and rules. But as Desmond and Gwendolyn finished their meal, laughing over cold tea and shared secrets, the galaxy felt small enough to hold in the palm of a hand. They were ready for whatever came next, as long as they faced it together.